Hi there, musitrature recaps here. Today, I'm excited to explain the movie, Flawless Love. It starts with a young woman named Refi giving birth to a baby boy on a rainy and somber night. Her husband has passed away due to war, but her love for him endures as she makes a heartfelt promise to raise their son, no matter how tough it gets. However, as time goes on, it becomes clear that Yusuf, her son, hasn't grown and remains a delicate soul with mental challenges. Fast forward to 1980 in Turkey. Refi wakes up early to rouse Yusuf from his sleep and calls him to the breakfast table. Knowing he needs assistance, Refi helps Yusuf tie his shoelaces and hands him a bagel cart. As they head out, Yusuf encounters a fellow schoolboy who is aware of his difficulties and shows compassion. Salim, the schoolboy, tries to impart useful knowledge, sharing intriguing stories and discussing the current events in their country. Meanwhile, Refi goes around the neighborhood selling towels to make extra money and provide for their family. Once they arrive at their destination, Yusuf meets Judge Nahat. This compassionate man helps stabilize the bagel cart with a stone, understanding Yusuf's condition. After purchasing a bagel, Judge Nahat heads to work, promising to meet Yusuf again later. In a turn of events, an unfamiliar person approaches Yusuf and pays him handsomely to hold on to a package. Despite his limited understanding, Yusuf agrees and discreetly places the package under the bagel counter. On his way back home, he's stopped by the police. During a search of his cart, they discover a bag containing a gun. Suspicions arise that Yusuf might be connected to criminal activities related to a potential coup d'état in Turkey. The police apprehend him and take him to the station. Facing accusations, the police subject the vulnerable Yusuf to torture and taunts, hoping to extract a confession. They inflict both physical pain and humiliation upon him, desperately trying to make him reveal information. In the midst of this torment, Yusuf remains confused and incoherent, pleading for help. The torture takes its toll, pushing Yusuf to his breaking point, and ultimately causing him to descend into madness. Recognizing that they couldn't extract any valuable information, the police decided to transfer the young man to a psychiatric hospital. Upon his arrival, he becomes highly anxious at even the slightest loud noise. The guards, aware of his vulnerabilities, exploit his shortcomings and physically mistreat him due to his inadequate reactions. After hearing of the new patient's arrival, Dr. Sezon meets with Yusuf to assess his condition. However, Yusuf is overwhelmed with fear and remains unresponsive to the doctor's words and gestures. Strangely, he displays a level of trust towards a kind-hearted woman, allowing her to open his hand for the first time. Inside his palm, the woman finds money meant for bagels, a gesture he had intended for his mother. Another doctor assists Sezon and discerns that Yusuf has cognitive impairments and is unable to read or write. As the evening approaches, Yusuf's mother anxiously waits by the window, growing increasingly worried as her son fails to return. Meanwhile, Nurse Helene provides care for Yusuf, tending to him by offering nourishing soup and gently tucking him into bed. Despite the guards' mockery, Helene's compassionate nature is unwavering, as she understands the importance of providing comfort to those in need. Fearing for her son's safety, Refi embarks on a search for Yusuf amidst a city under curfew, its streets patrolled by soldiers. Approaching one of the soldiers, she inquires about her son's whereabouts before eventually returning home. During the night, the fearful Yusuf comes to a realization that he cannot bear staying in this unfamiliar place any longer and attempts to escape. Unfortunately, his escape plan proves futile as the gate is locked and the guide lacks the necessary key. The guards on patrol catch sight of Yusuf's attempt and, in response, subject him to punishment before forcibly returning him to his room. Subsequently, the guards turn their attention to Violet, an unfortunate girl who converses solely with her wooden doll. Taking advantage of her vulnerability, the guards escort Violet to an abandoned building where they commit heinous acts against her, exploiting her isolation and inability to speak out. As the morning draws near, the returning soldiers make their way to Refi's house, bearing news about her son's whereabouts. Recognizing that Yusuf is at a psychiatric hospital, Refi gathers warm clothing and selects her son's beloved sweaters, passed down from his father. She initiates a meeting with the attending doctor, discovering that her son's mental breakdown was a result of the torment he endured. The distressing methods included placing a trash can over his head and subjecting him to electric shocks, ultimately causing him to succumb. Cezanne pledges to take legal action against the police officers who abused their authority. However, Refi realizes that justice might not be served, given the lack of concern for her feeble-minded son. Upon seeing his mother, Yusuf rushes into her embrace, imploring her to take him home. Regrettably, Refi explains that she cannot fulfill his request. Instead, she leaves warm clothes for him and promises to return once he's learned to read and write. Tearfully, Yusuf accepts this, vowing to do everything in his power to expedite his progress and ensure her swift return. After Refi departs, Yusuf attempts to unpack a food basket, struggling in the process. Dundar comes to his aid, yet Yusuf declines to eat and leaves the food for other hospital patients. In a friendly gesture, Riza attempts to bond with Yusuf and forge a connection. However, when the guards spot a cigarette in Riza's possession, they launch a brutal attack on him, subjecting him to a merciless beating. In defense of his fellow patient, Yusuf intervenes, pushing one of the guards away. This act of bravery, unfortunately, incurs the wrath of the guards. Fueled by anger, they drag Yusuf to an abandoned building and proceed to assault him with sticks. Menekshi, who witnesses the unfolding brutality, rushes to seek help from Cezanne to put an end to the ongoing lawlessness. The doctor intervenes, calming the guards and compelling them to cease their aggression towards Yusuf. Despite enduring the torment, Yusuf finds solace in the presence of the charming Menekshi, falling in love with her instantly. Meanwhile, young Salim encounters Yusuf's mother and inquires about his whereabouts, expressing concern for his friend's well-being and pledging to visit Refi. Simultaneously, a student notices Refi's confusion about her house, as she mistakenly tries to enter the wrong door, her apartment being on the adjacent street. In the evening, Riza expresses gratitude to Yusuf for his assistance and vows to help him learn how to read. Beginning the next morning, they embark on a journey of learning letters and words to enhance Yusuf's education. Despite the challenge of focusing, Menekshi's proximity captivates Yusuf's attention. Her smile not only uplifts him, but also stirs a desire to take action. After seeking permission from Cezanne and obtaining a pencil and paper, Yusuf returns to his room. With a basic grasp of letters, he pens a heartfelt note, inscribing their initials within a heart, and places it on Menekshi's pillow. The guards, filled with arrogance and impunity, turn their attention to the unfortunate Violet, who receives candies as a reward for her cruel actions. Though Violet remains silent, her resentment towards men is palpable, evidenced by her act of shattering the candies with a stone. During the night, Yusuf awakens from a harrowing nightmare, recalling the torment he endured at the police station. Overwhelmed by fear, he contemplates running away and returning home. However, his yearning for Menekshi's smile anchors him, reminding him of his deep love for her. Meanwhile, the guards discuss their sinister activities and once again target Violet. Taking her to an abandoned house, they restrain her and proceed to extort money from another client who has paid for time with a defenseless and vulnerable Violet. As dawn approaches, Menekshi awakens and notices her friend's absence. Out on the street, a piercing scream pierces the air, rousing both guards and patients from their slumber. Tragically, Violet, unable to endure the torment any longer, has taken her own life. When morning arrives, Cezanne learns of the heart-wrenching incident and informs the guards that an investigation will be conducted. However, their response is indifferent, as they possess influential connections and relatives who they believe can easily resolve the situation. In the evening, Riza continues to assist Yusuf with his studies, sharing news articles that include a mention of Judge Nahat. The mere mention of the judge's name triggers a memory for Yusuf of his final day of freedom. After Judge Nahat had purchased a bagel, he was ambushed by unidentified individuals in a car, leading to his untimely demise. Though the memory initially terrifies Yusuf, his cognitive challenges prevent him from retaining the fear. Meanwhile, Salim remains a steadfast presence in Refi's life, offering companionship and helping her navigate her solitude. The young boy writes a letter to Yusuf, requesting Refi's assistance in delivering it. Later on, Refi lovingly prepares homemade food to pamper her son. However, Yusuf's nights are still plagued by nightmares stemming from the trauma he endured. Dundar, understanding the depth of his struggle, provides comfort and reassurance to Yusuf. Come morning, Yusuf's attention remains fixed on Menekshi, who clings to a wooden toy that once belonged to her departed friend. Expressing his empathy, Yusuf sketches a symbol on his hand and extends a pencil to Menekshi. Upon learning that his mother will be visiting, Yusuf hurries to his space, donning a festive sweater in anticipation. Meanwhile, a security guard attempts to turn Refi away from the doors of the psychiatric hospital, informing her that visitor hours have ended for the day. In a bold move, Dundar intervenes in the exchange, asserting his authority in persuading the guard to relent, allowing Refi entry. During their poignant reunion, Yusuf reveals a heartwarming surprise to his mother, introducing her to the lovely Menekshi. As they join their hands, it becomes evident that the two halves form a single heart, symbolizing the profound connection that has blossomed amidst their shared challenges. Realizing that her son has found love, the mother's heart fills with genuine joy. Refi lovingly serves homemade food to her son and his girlfriend. After a while, she bids farewell to Yusuf and promises to knit a cardigan with an angelic face for Menekshi. An investigator arrives at the psychiatric hospital with the intent of uncovering the truth behind Violet's tragic fate. However, he happens to be a relative of one of the guards, leading him to assert that Violet's demise was a result of her own actions rather than bullying. With this, the case is swiftly closed, and justice eludes the perpetrators. While Cezanne suspects the guard's involvement, she lacks evidence and must reluctantly accept the investigators' conclusions. Meanwhile, Yusuf, proud of his progress, decides to showcase his newfound abilities to Cezanne. He demonstrates his ability to read and write, bringing a sense of satisfaction to the compassionate doctor. Yet, Yusuf's nights remain restless, prompting him to pay Menekshi a visit. However, upon entering her room, he is ambushed by guards who drag him outside and subject him to cruel mockery by dunking his head into a fountain. Come morning, Dundar informs Cezanne about the distressing incident and implores her to take action. Subsequently, she confronts the guards and issues a warning of potential dismissal. However, the guards remain unperturbed and confident, as they are well aware of the lack of concrete evidence against them. Recognizing that the guards may escape punishment, Dundar takes matters into his own hands, wielding a knife to convey a grave threat. He makes it clear that further abuse of patients could lead them to the next world. In light of the escalating situation, Cezanne decides to consult with Helene, her thoughts turning to the tragic story of Violet. Violet's refusal to marry against her will had led to prolonged torment, resulting in her being confined and mistreated by her own relatives, eventually driving her to madness. Recognizing that they can't undo the past, Helene and Cezanne opt to create a delightful dinner. Upon discovering an abundance of flour, the doctor extends an invitation to Yusuf and his girlfriend to join them in the kitchen. Together, the four of them craft delectable bagels, which they share with all the patients. Later, the couple seek solitude once more, updating the drawings on their hands as a way to sustain their feelings and fearlessly display their affection. In the evening, the guards indulge in excessive drinking, unaware of Cezanne's delay. Incensed by their behavior, the woman admonishes her subordinates and issues threats, yet the men remain unshaken. The next morning, Cezanne confides in Isamu about the ongoing misconduct, seeking assistance, but he is powerless to intervene. Subsequently, one of the guards approaches Menekshi, cautioning her against approaching Yusuf and warning of dire consequences. Following the man's departure, Yusuf approaches Menekshi, who has discovered a heart-shaped leaf and wishes to offer it to her beloved. Recognizing the peril Yusuf faces, Menekshi tearfully leaves him at her door and retreats to her room to regain composure. Perplexed and emotionally burdened, Yusuf struggles to comprehend the situation, feeling isolated and shedding tears. Meanwhile, Yusuf's mother, engrossed in knitting a cardigan for Menekshi, becomes unhinged. Oblivious to a small flood caused by a tap left open, she becomes lost in her thoughts. That night, Menekshi steps out of her room and encounters a slumbering Yusuf by her door. As she attempts to cover him with her handkerchief, her attention is drawn to a nearby guard. The next morning, Menekshi, emboldened by her love, defies the threats and approaches Yusuf. Returning the handkerchief to her, Yusuf embraces her warmly. Dundar once again attempts to persuade Cezanne to influence the guards. However, the doctor remains resolute in not catering to all the demands of a patient, especially someone evading justice. Dundar confesses to having sent 3 individuals to the afterlife, viewing his actions as justifiable for protecting the girl they had mistreated. During the night, Yusuf heads to the restroom, but the guards assault him and transport him to an abandoned nearby house. There, they secure him to the bars, later bringing Menekshi to the same location. Convinced that this night will be etched in the couple's memory forever, the guards issue a veiled threat, warning against divulging the incident. Should they dare to speak out, the consequences would fall upon not the informant, but their loved one. Departing, the guards proceed to collect payment from a client tasked with taunting the girl in front of her boyfriend. Dundar intervenes, taking matters into his own hands, and wielding a knife, he dispatches the guards and their client to the afterlife, ultimately freeing the enamored couple. Come morning, Riza is the first to discover the lifeless bodies of the guards, greeting the sight with a smile. A month passes, and Menekshi and Yusuf find happiness together. Cezanne recognizes their harmlessness and implores Isamu to grant a release for the young man and his girlfriend. The doctor, though hesitant, eventually relents. The following morning, Yusuf and Menekshi bid farewell to the psychiatric hospital and their newfound friends. Cezanne accompanies the couple to Yusuf's residence. Upon arriving, Yusuf knocks on the door, calling out for his mother. However, Refi fails to recognize her son and shuts the door. Cezanne understands that the woman's mind has succumbed to madness, deeply affecting Yusuf, who sheds tears of sorrow. As he gazes back at his mother, who continues to wait by the window, unaware of his presence, the movie concludes. Thank you for watching.